Waiter insults Keanu Reeves at luxury restaurant. What happened next will shock you. The dim glow of chandeliers bathed the elegant dining hall of the restaurant in golden light. Patrons dressed in designer attire murmured softly over gourmet meals. It was the kind of place where a reservation list stretched months, and even the air smelled expensive. Among the crowd, a man entered quietly, wearing a simple black jacket, faded jeans, and scuffed boots. His unassuming presence drew no attention at first, but a closer look revealed something familiar about his face. Keanu Reeves scanned the room, his eyes reflecting kindness and humility, as if he wasn't a global superstar. He was here not for the fame or spectacle, but because he had heard the chef was exceptional. Slipping into a corner table, he waved away the maitre d' who offered a more prominent spot, preferring a quiet seat near the window. The waiter, a tall man in his late 30s with a sharp jawline and a sharper tongue, approached him with an air of impatience. His eyes scanned Keanu's modest attire with thinly veiled disdain. "Do you have a reservation?" he asked curtly, his voice loud enough to turn a few heads. Keanu nodded politely. "I do, under the name Reeves." The waiter's expression flickered for a moment, recognition dawning, but his ego quickly overtook any awe he might have felt. "Ah, Mr. Reeves, right this way," he said, leading him to his table. However, there was a deliberate coldness in his tone. When Keanu settled in, the waiter leaned in slightly, lowering his voice but not his condescension. "You know, Mr. Reeves, this isn't exactly a burger joint. Are you sure you're in the right place?" Keanu offered a small smile, unfazed. "I think I'll manage." The waiter smirked and left to fetch the menu, muttering something under his breath about celebrities who think they can walk in anywhere. As the evening progressed, the waiter continued his subtle jabs. When Keanu ordered a simple glass of water before deciding on a meal, the waiter commented, "Of course. Wouldn't want to strain your wallet, would we?" Keanu remained calm, refusing to rise to the bait. He had been through far more challenging situations in life than a rude waiter. Still, his quiet dignity only seemed to fuel the man's arrogance. The other diners began to notice the interaction. Whispers rippled through the room as some recognized Keanu. A couple at a nearby table even approached him for a quick photo, which he graciously agreed to. The waiter, observing this, rolled his eyes and muttered, "Well, I suppose this is dinner and a show." When Keanu finally placed his order, he chose one of the restaurant's signature dishes, a delicate truffle risotto. The waiter raised an eyebrow. "Excellent choice, though I must warn you, it's an acquired taste. Perhaps too refined for simpler palates." Keanu's response was a polite nod, but the tension in the room was palpable. People began shifting uncomfortably in their seats, unsure whether to intervene or let the situation play out. The food arrived, and as expected, the dish was impeccable. Keanu took his time savoring each bite, visibly impressed. The waiter, however, couldn't resist one last dig. "Surprised? I told you this place wasn't for everyone." This time Keanu set down his fork and looked directly at the waiter. His voice was calm but carried a weight that silenced the room. "You know, it costs nothing to be kind. Perhaps you should try it sometime." The waiter blinked, momentarily thrown off balance, but quickly regained his composure. "Kindness doesn't pay the bills," he retorted with a smirk, walking away. As Keanu finished his meal, he requested the check. The manager, having been alerted to the situation by concerned staff, approached him personally. "Mr. Reeves, please allow me to apologize for the behavior of our waiter. Your meal is on the house." Keanu shook his head. "That won't be necessary. I appreciate the gesture, but I prefer to pay my way." He handed the manager his credit card, along with an amount far exceeding the bill. The manager looked at him in confusion. "This is a very generous tip. Are you sure?" Keanu smiled. "The kitchen staff did an amazing job. They deserve it." Before leaving, he wrote something on a napkin and handed it to the manager. "Please pass this to the waiter," he said, his tone as gentle as ever. As Keanu exited the restaurant, leaving behind a hushed and bewildered crowd, the manager unfolded the napkin. Written on it were the words, "Everyone is fighting battles you can't see." Maybe this will remind him to treat people better. The waiter, upon receiving the note, scoffed at first but couldn't shake the unease that crept in. Something about Keanu's calm demeanor and unexpected generosity lingered in his mind, and that was just the beginning. The waiter couldn't sleep that night. Tossing and turning, he kept replaying the events of the evening in his mind. The way Keanu Reeves had handled his insults with grace, and how he had still left such a generous tip nagged at him. It wasn't the guilt of being rude to a celebrity that bothered him. It was the realization that someone he had treated so poorly had chosen to respond with kindness instead of anger. The next morning, he arrived at the restaurant earlier than usual. The manager greeted him with a frown. "We need to talk," she said, motioning for him to step into her office. He sighed, bracing himself for a lecture or even a dismissal. Instead, she handed him another note, this one accompanied by a small box. "Mr. Reeves left this for you. He asked that we give it to you if you showed up today." Confused, the waiter opened the note first. It read, "Kindness isn't just for others. It's for yourself, too. I hope this helps." Inside the box was a watch. Not just any watch, but an elegant timepiece engraved with the words, "Make time for kindness." The waiter stared at the gift, his chest tightening. He didn't understand why Keanu Reeves would go to such lengths for someone who had shown him nothing but disrespect. It felt undeserved, and yet it stirred something deep within him. For the first time in years, he felt ashamed of how he had been treating people. That day, his behavior at work was noticeably different. He greeted diners with genuine warmth, took time to chat with them, and even helped a junior staff member who was struggling to carry a tray. The transformation didn't go unnoticed. Patrons began complimenting him, and the manager, though surprised, acknowledged his efforts with a nod. Still, the waiter couldn't shake the feeling that he needed to do more. He wanted to repay Keanu's kindness in some way, to show that he had truly learned from the experience. That evening, he decided to research Keanu Reeves and discovered something that left him stunned. Keanu's life, despite his fame, had been far from easy. He had endured loss, heartbreak, and challenges that would have broken most people. Yet he had chosen to remain kind, humble, and generous. The waiter realized that his own struggles, though difficult, were no excuse for treating others poorly. Keanu's resilience and empathy became a source of inspiration. Over the next few weeks, the waiter began volunteering at a local shelter on his days off. He found fulfillment in helping those less fortunate, and the act of giving back filled a void he hadn't even realized existed. His entire outlook on life started to change. One day, while serving at the restaurant, a regular patron who had noticed his improved attitude asked him why he seemed so different lately. The waiter smiled and said, "Let's just say someone reminded me that kindness can change lives, starting with your own." Months passed, and the waiter's transformation became the talk of the restaurant. One evening, as he was clearing tables, the maître d' approached him. "There's someone here asking for you," she said, her expression unreadable. He turned toward the entrance and froze. Keanu Reeves stood there, as unassuming as ever, wearing the same modest jacket and kind smile. "Mr. Reeves," the waiter said, approaching him nervously. I, thank you for everything." Keanu chuckled softly. "I didn't do much. You did the hard part." The waiter nodded, his throat tightening with emotion. "I just wanted to say, I'm sorry for how I treated you, and thank you for showing me a better way." Keanu's smile widened. "Apology accepted. But remember, the best way to thank someone is to pass it on." They shook hands and Keanu left quietly, just as he had the first time. But this time the waiter didn't feel the shame or regret that had haunted him before. Instead, he felt a sense of purpose. From that day forward, the waiter made it his mission to live by the lesson he had learned. His story began to spread, inspiring not just his co-workers but also the patrons who dined at the restaurant. The luxury restaurant, once known only for its exclusivity and high prices, became a place where kindness thrived. A ripple effect started by one man's grace in the face of insult. Kindness is a powerful force that can transform not just those who receive it, but also those who choose to give it, even in the most unexpected moments.